I think we should just open it up if there are questions. I mean, are there things that you guys are aware of that you think I just haven't touched upon? He's certainly going to get into distribution. It's going to be really helpful.
I have a question. We were talking about the chain of the title.
Yeah.
That needs to be clean, and we were talking about we need to register our script. Can we register the chain title?
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you what?
Can we register the
Yes.
chain of the title?
Well, let's think about the simplest way you see it. Probably for independents is if you're a member of the Writers Guild. I think maybe. I don't know if you even need to be a member of the Writers Guild to register. I think you can register with the WGA. Yeah, you can register with the WGA.
$20.
Yeah, there you go.
For a title, yeah.
Yeah.
For a channel.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's one way. Script, right? $20.
Yeah, of course.
So that isn't foolproof. You know, it doesn't take away all the risk,
Yeah.
but it helps. The other major thing that you see happen is the U.S. Copyright Office.
Mhm.
So to get a little bit detailed, especially I spent a number of years in these commercial banks doing this. So what's the collateral that I take? Okay, so I have a lot of the commercial collateral we've talked about, right? I get the first receipts that come in from the exploitation of the movie. I get the pre-sales. I get what gets sold later from the sales estimates. If I monetize and put money against the soft money, I get that. So, and I get a return on all that. But what I also get, I'm taking a security interest in the physical film itself and the SPE that made it. So, and that's one of the reasons they're done like that as bankruptcy remotes, is the people that loan the money want to have a clean place that if whatever they need to do, it's isolated. So that collateral includes a security interest in what's called a mortgage of copyright.
Yeah.
So they're literally, that's why that chain of title is important. Once they can follow that where the rights get to the correct place, they register with the Copyright Office, they file a mortgage and a security lien against it, and there are sort of famous historic legal cases about this where these things have been challenged.
Yeah.
And that's why they become important. So if you want, you know, people like banks that have a lot of money to be in this business, these things exist because without them, they probably don't do it. They probably just get too scared.
We also were talking about not a lot, but you were mentioning about the sales agents and
The sales
agents,
yeah.
agents, yeah.
Yeah.
So these are people, they are attaching potential investors, capitals. What's
Yeah,
the job?
sometimes they do. I mean, they can. And by the way, you know, just like a producer, there's not necessarily, you know, an accreditation for these functions.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's not
It's
like
flexible.
a doctor. You know, you kind of know what their background is, you know what their qualifications are, and it doesn't always explain exactly what they do or how they do what they do.
Right.
So a sales agent is a good example. You know, you have sales agents that frankly, some sales agents only sell essentially completed movies. There aren't many that do that, but you know, it's possible. A lot of the sales agents try to demonstrate that they have value because they can go out and attract buyers like Alejandro and say, you know, I have this relationship. And so, you know, for the right product, I can't tell you up front that he's definitely going to buy it, but I know his taste, and I know what he buys, so I may know what he's likely to be interested in. And that's going to help shape those projections that they make. And so they do their list of projected values, and then if they will negotiate things like what their commission is, and a lot of that's going to be driven on them telling you that they can go get a certain level of pre-sales, because you're going to talk with the sales agent. And frankly, if you're doing projects that need that sales agent up front, you're going to have this conversation. If you're doing projects that don't even need the sales agent up front, you probably want to have those conversations. could look at the sales agent as somebody who's clearly, compared to the producer in almost every case, so much closer to the distribution market internationally. So they know, there's a real knowledge there that they know. By the way, there's also, people that aren't trustworthy in all of these functions, producers, sales agents, so it's a tricky landscape, but they know a lot about the market, they know who they sell to, so they actually can be surprisingly accurate in a lot of cases, and the ones that are most accurate are the ones that the commercial banks all like, because they've just watched them deliver on the values that they said should be there. So they take more risk with them compared to the ones that don't get involved with the banks.
How do you find them?
Okay, that's not hard actually. It's not hard to find them, it might be hard to get their attention, but it's not hard to find them. There's actually a trade organization called IFTA, International Film and Television Association.
Alliance.
Is that what it's called? IFTA
Yeah.
Alliance? Oh yeah, because they have other offices regionally.
Correct.
Right, that's right. So IFTA, the way they think of themselves is they're kind of, if you know what the MPAA is, that's the Motion Picture Association of America. They're the ones who do like the R rating or the G rating, so they're a trade association that really is kind of targeted on the major studios for the most part, and the cinemas. Cinemas have their own organization as well, but IFTA kind of markets itself as the trade association to the independent world. And a lot of the sales agents are members of this trade association. And for being members, they share and they get access to information. It's like any trade association. But when you go to the American film market every November down here at the Lowe's Hotel, a lot of the people that are there as sales agents, and what they do is they take over the hotel basically, and a couple of other spaces as well, but they take out, they're not hotel rooms during that market, they're offices for the sales agents for the most part. So they're sitting there, so one way to do it, a simple way, buy a badge for the American film market, walk around and meet the sales agents. That's efficient for you, but it's going to be hard to get their attention. Unless you're lucky and you're at the end of the market. There's a whole dynamic about who's at the market and when and for how long. So you might not get the right decision maker even if you can talk to somebody. But you can find, I think, publicly listed the list of people that are members of that organization. So you can contact them that way. You can ask, distributors, bond companies, other producers. You can sort of say actually that's probably one of your essential things to do. And what you'll see when you start doing that as well, and if you combine that with actually going to one of the film markets, one of the valuable things about just walking around at the film market is not even necessarily talking to anybody, but you would not want to be there and not probably try to talk to somebody. But you can kind of see as you walk by their office what they're selling.
Yeah.
And so if you have an idea of what kind of movie you're looking to make, obviously it helps you narrow, where you want to target your efforts. And you can kind of, by looking, when you see a poster of a movie, you get an immediate idea of who's in it. You might get an idea if you see enough of those posters, kind of what you think the production value is. So you start to get a feel for what size of movies they handle, what genres. You see a ton of action and thriller, movies there. But within that, it's a good way to start to categorize them at least. Yeah.
Do you only get one shot when you talk to people like that? And if so, at what stage is the sort of optimal?
No, not necessarily. I mean, it just depends. I mean, the best thing to do is really sort of be plotting about it. I mean, I think if you show up, you see this, by the way. If you go to the American Film Market every year, you see producers walking around, bag of scripts, and they're desperately trying to get somebody to read their script. Sometimes it happens, or they talk to the right person. It could be a junior salesperson in the company, but it could be somebody who within the company, you know, is looked to as having an eye for new material. You don't know. So it's a bit of there's a lot of randomness in that. But I wouldn't say that by going there with the intent of having a conversation, you'll never get their attention again. I think it partly depends on how you handle that. Maybe one way to handle that is say, look, I know you're busy doing other things, but I'm just trying to get to know you and your company. I'm thinking about something. This may not be the right place to even talk about it, but maybe it's a place you start conversation as opposed to finishing it.
So when you look for an equity, right? Initial equity for your movie, and you know, how do you interest your potential investors with returns? I mean, I know it's a hard question to answer, but what do you say? How do you prep yourself? Of course, we know already you talked about the package. You know, how do you package it with attachments, so on and so forth, of money. But what else? I mean, how do you interest? How do you?
I mean, preparation's a huge part of that. You know, there's a lot of people would say, don't show anybody a script until it's the script you want it to be.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot, especially with distributors, I think that's a very valid point. They don't want to see something that's work in process. You know, this is our first draft, but it's going to get better. So what? I mean, that's honestly, I mean, it's important from your perspective, but they probably aren't going to spend their time on it. In fact, if I got approached like that, I'd say, well, you know, come to me when you have your last draft. When you think you have your final draft, then let's talk. By the way, there are investors, especially angel investors, who might take the exact opposite approach. And they may say, I want to be involved early on. You know, you never know. People make their money in all kinds of different businesses and they spend it in this arena for a whole variety of reasons. Maybe they, in their mind, always wanted to be a writer. It happens, you know? So, hey, I want to be able to give you notes. Now, beware, you may be taking on an investor that you don't want, because, and look, I mean, the examples go all over the place. You know, the investors that want their nieces in the movie, you know, there's all kinds of crazy stuff that happens. So you know, just have to have your guard up. But you know, I think you know, find what you want to make. Be very passionate and very deliberate about why you want to do it. For capital, the more you can connect that to, here's value in what I have right now, and here's the value of where it's going. You gotta bring them into your business plan. In terms of mentally, they need to get it, and the more preparation that you can do to support that, the better. And by the way, the first equity may be what you're doing in development, so it may be just convincing the writer to let you option the script, right? so that they're risking with you instead, because otherwise you're gonna, at some point, if you don't have the resources yourself, you're gonna have to find an investor to acquire the script, and that's really hard. Yeah.
Especially in low budget films, people usually try to approach, like you were showing, some equity from not standard investors, some private investors from different industries whatsoever.
And for film, by the way, I don't know that there is a standard investor. I mean, it's all over the place.
Right.
Really all over. For
Well,
all
meaning
the
like not your.
yeah, not like an organized fund that
yeah,
says
right.
this is our business,
Right,
this is
yeah.
what, yeah.
But, so when you do that, how do you project your returns? How do you put that structure? Because I know for a fact, and I just want the people to know here, when you do approach those, you have to have your water flow, you know, and you have to have those projections, worst and realistic and best case scenarios, and so how do you do
Yeah,
that?
I mean, maybe I can follow up and get you like a resource to look at. I mean, if you haven't looked already, the most rudimentary thing is either looking online, you might find examples of film waterfalls or recoupment waterfalls, they might be called. You know, there are a variety of books that get written about the business. I happen to know an attorney that's written a book called The Biz, B-I-Z. Has a lot of detail about various negotiation points. I don't know, might have examples of that. I'll try to maybe see if I can find something that's easy for people to find once they know where to look, that shows you like an example of what that looks like. In terms of projecting the revenues, you know, where you can, try to ground it in reality. I mean, as having seen so many business plans for any movie, name the most successful independent movie that's recently happened. That's what they pick as what they're gonna do. So, you know, it was My Big Fat Greek Wedding, then it was, you know, Blair Witch Project, then it was probably Paranormal Activity, you know, that's what you see. And frankly, if it's at all sophisticated capital, they're gonna say, come on. You know, that's like saying, you know, it's a risky business. So I'd say, you know, try to be honest with your investor, build your case of value. And beyond that, you know, you do have to know a lot if you were gonna just try to project what the receipts were, and then there's a lot of assumptions about what the actual costs are. Some which you'll know, like the budget, because you're doing that, but some, you know, I was saying earlier about this digital platform, you know, they're always changing. But you know, the more you can build your case that there's an experienced view on that, the better, just generically. And get them, by the way, you know, for private equity, you know, get them in love with the story, for goodness sakes, you know? Because the reality is so much of that money has made its money not in that business. So, you know, it's an affinity industry. Like it or not, people try to dodge that and say it's counter-correlated, it's recession resistant. There's some truth in places in all of that, but especially for an individual project with an investor that could be like an angel type investor that funds a thing, you know, make them fall in love with the story, make them fall in love with the characters, make them fall in love with the director you want to use. You know, that's a huge part of producing. That's what the guys do at the studio. You know, they convince the guys at the studio, you know, who wouldn't love this, right?
So what's the typical profit split?
Well, the sort of standard pattern for independent movies is once the risk capital is returned, so let's say whoever put up the amount for the budget, once you recoup the budget and with some level of return for maybe some of the people, depending on what kind of risk they took. If it's a bank, it's going to be interest and fees. If it's an equity investor, it's probably going to be some premium on that recoupment of their capital. The classic indie thing, if there's really such a thing, it's that that upside gets split 50-50. One camp is the capital, that could be one investor, it could be a couple of investors. They can just determine who took what risk and how to split that, that's their business probably. You're gonna know about it. And then there's the producer half. So you have to make deals with a writer, director, and again, that's another place where, you know, if you can have them take the lowest fee possible and be with you in that risk position, you know, it might be worth giving up more of that upside.
And actors.
And actors, for sure. And then, you know, name actors, believe it or not, some name actors, you know, will get more interested and more involved if they have, regardless of how they got there, a lot of them have production companies set up. So you might find a way to involve them that, and you know, there's an adage about big movie stars is they do one for them and one for everybody else, and they alternate. And there's some truth to that. If you look at, you know, people do their blockbuster tentpole movies, and remarkably they go find a little project that they just really like. Happens, or you know, all these things come with risk, but sometimes actors want to direct. Risky, maybe, sometimes really rewarding.
When a small producer, somebody who's new to this business, comes in with very little capital, I don't know, we're talking little, $25,000, maybe $50,000. There's always this dilemma. You can either produce something within that budget and maybe take advantage of some soft money or whatever, like make the budget bigger, or you can come in as a small fish in the pond and kind of become part of like a larger picture.
Yeah.
So what would you recommend better?
I think you have to think about, you know, what are your objectives and what's your skill set. You know, there are probably people in that arena that, as it turns out, are fabulous development people. And maybe no one else has discovered that yet, but they may know it about themselves already. They have an eye for material. You know, maybe your money, as risky as it sounds, you know, is best placed, you know, across a couple options. Who knows? I mean, you have to recognize that one of your ways to recover your own money then may be to flip the project over to somebody else. But that happens. Another way is that, you know, you have to ask yourself, you know, if I'm going to make a feature movie, you know, what is the absolute minimum to make the movie you want to make? What if you had to scratch, crawl, do all the things that you're probably going to have to do as an independent producer anyways? What's the minimum number that you need? And maybe you say, I just can't make a feature for that, or I can't make the feature I want for that. So,
Yeah.
you know, you have to look at, I know people that make short films, and I have a lot of cautions about a short film as a business prospect, but think about the longer path. I mean, maybe that's a way to move yourself along, you know, on the upward path, maybe, and that certainly happens in the director arena all the time. You have people that come out of the commercial production world. You know, some people also spend time from a producer standpoint in the commercial production world, because guess what? You learn how to get a lot of value on a limited amount of time, a finite budget. You know, you see some great people come out of the commercial world on all levels, cinematographers, directors, all the time. And you know, and usually because it's a commercial world, for better or for worse, it's often very cutting edge, where a lot of stuff gets tried out, you know, effects-wise as well. So.
Or make a short film, which is a predecessor to your future feature film, and use it as a marketing.
Yeah, I mean, probably more so for a filmmaker, but as a producer, you know, hey, if you start producing shorts that are getting noticed, you're going to be in the festival circuit, but you may be in that circuit anyways at a small feature film. It's a good chance you will. So, a short film, you know, you might be able to get seen faster by making one or more really good short films. Short films are hard. I mean, think about to get an impact and hold people. It's not holding their attention. It's just being impactful, to be the thing they're talking about.